K2 Smart Fork. Well, K2 Smart Fork came on K2 mountain bikes. I believe this thing was manufactured by Newline. It's a rather interesting suspension fork. Now, yes, it's only got around 80 to 100mm of travel. I believe there's two different versions of this fork. But this fork actually uses electronics, hence the name Smart Fork. It has a smart damping system. Basically a linear encoder that determines the fork's travel. So depending on where the fork sits in its travel, it opens or shuts a valve via an electric motor inside the damper to control oil flow through the damper. And it's an electronically valved damper. This is the sort of thing you get on a Mercedes S-Class, or something like that, or industrial trucks and vehicles like that. It's not the sort of thing you usually get on a push bike. So, it is pretty interesting. Now, I've never had one of these. I've never even actually seen one of these in person. I believe they're pretty rare. And 20 plus year old electronics, I don't know if they're going to still work. But I would like to get my hands on one day. I believe it is grease lubricated. It's not like a Mazzocchi Z1 or anything like that. It's not super plush fork. It wasn't known for that. And I think it was known to be quite unreliable. So, and some people said they didn't notice a difference in damping. I don't know if that's because the fork was nearly seized up because it's grease lubricated, needed a re-grease, or what the deal was there. But the fact that it's an electronic fork in the late 90s, that's fairly impressive. So yeah, the K2 Smart Fork. K2 Smart Shock. Yep, it's a bit like the fork, but it's a shock. Well, no, it's a linkage fork with a shock in between it. And the rear shock on the bike, I believe, had the same system on it. So the whole thing was a smart suspension setup. Very similar to the Smart Fork. Had an electronic damper inside it, and it took batteries. There was different modes and things like that. Very cool looking bike that it's attached to. Absolutely fantastic. I mean, look at that thing. It's thermoplastic, not carbon fibre, so there's a bit of a difference there. But yeah, still a pretty cool bike overall, and pretty cool, suspension design, really. How well it worked, I don't know. I've never had one of these. I would like to get one of these at some point. But yeah, it's a pretty cool design for the late 90s. I mean, linkage forks, that was a bit of a thing a little while ago because the axle path stays the same. So they do have their benefits, but there is also the downsides they have, like more maintenance. All the pivot points can wear out, and the whole thing can become quite baggy over time. So that's a bit like a rear end of a downhill bike or a full suspension bike, but at the front as well. So you have it twofold. So that is the extra maintenance that linkage forks require. This one, apparently the electronics were not reliable at all, and water would get into the battery and cause all kinds of problems. So that's only by going by reviews of the time, but still a pretty cool fork and a pretty cool bike, no less. The Pace RC 150. Now this is an interesting fork. It features a 3-piece lower leg chassis. The legs are made out of partially carbon fibre, like carbon fibre tubes, with aluminium dropouts. It's a 3-piece design. The arch against also made of carbon fibre. And I believe there's an aluminium backing plate on there as well. It's a dual crown design, obviously. It does have oil damping, and as far as I know, it is oil lubricated as opposed to grease lubricated. I do know older Pace products were definitely grease lubricated. In fact, there was actually grease nipples on the fork, so you could re-grease them. These I don't think are. I think these are running actual proper oil damping. 150mm of travel, fairly lightweight as well. I can't find a weight on them, but I do know they're not that heavy. I've picked a set of these up before. Being carbon fibre lower legs, they are pretty light. They're bonded, so I believe the lowers are actually bonded onto the carbon fibre, so that's kind of scary. Hopefully the bonding holds up over time, as these are getting fairly old now. But yeah, this is an interesting fork. Downhill fork with carbon fibre lowers. It's not really something you see, and I know it's not downhill by modern standards, but back then 150mm travel was definitely a long travel fork. Today that's something the RockShox Yari can beat. That's fairly mad, really. Yeah, really interesting, British bit of kit. They are a British-made fork. And, the little other thing I liked about the Pace company is the little logo. As a TIG welder myself, the little logo of the guy holding the TIG gun the welder basically holding a TIG gun and wearing a welding helmet is a pretty cool logo. Obviously, you're going to have a picture of that come up on your screen. I mean, yeah, how could I do a crazy fork list part 2 without including pace forks? This is just the only one we're going to include because there are so many different versions. It'll just end up as a pace fork video, which I could do another time. I will be honest, I haven't really owned a massive amount of these. I only owned a couple, and most of the ones I have seen have unfortunately been, well, destroyed by the previous owner of a used bike, so that's just how it is. But I don't know, I hope to get some more crazy retro stuff this year, and this certainly fills that category. If you was wondering though, these are spring and MCU setups. There is elastomers in here as well. They're just mostly used as a bump stop, a bit like the one on your car. If if you're a teenager and you cut the springs, you just ride on the bump stop. That bit's made out of the same sort of stuff. But yeah, they're a spring with oil damping, coil over oil suspension fork. Fairly standard, especially for the time. And yeah, pretty interesting fork. So the next one is even crazier. Okay, so this one's an enigma wrapped in a mystery. Bergman suspension forks. Does anybody know about these two Bergman suspension forks I'm about to show you in the photos? They're clearly inverted suspension forks, I can tell that much. I have seen one photo on eBay that looks like these things are grease lubricated because the seals are totally destroyed and the stanchions are totally destroyed. There doesn't appear to be any schmoo leaking out of the thing, so either all the oil's long drained away or they're grease lubricated. I'm assuming these are oil you've got to have proper oil damping. They can't just be an elastomer fork, no way. Otherwise you've got all the looks and all the travel for no reason. I'm fairly sure these are adjustable rebound damping and such. All the websites I seem to find are in German, so I assume they are a German suspension fork. And they don't really offer much information. It's just photos about the fork, and then it asks you about cookies and all the other kind of junk you get on websites these days, GDPR and all that rubbish. But yeah, so if anyone knows anything about these Bergman downhill forks, manufacturing dates, that kind of stuff, damping type, exploded diagrams, that kind of stuff, please let me know. Just an interesting fork put in here because, well, it's an unusual one you just don't see. So yeah, put that in the comments if you have any more information on these crazy Bergman downhill forks. As you can see, they are inverted, single crown and dual crown variations. And yeah, put it in the description, guys, because I'd like to know more about these. Future Shock Enduro E150. Now, Specialized had been modifying other manufacturers' suspension forks for years, putting their specialised brain technology into them. This basically meant change of dampers, some had different lowers to others, and various other tweaks done here and there to RockShox, Fox and X-Fusion products. However, this, as far as I'm aware, is Specialised's first attempt at fully building a suspension fork. Now, it's a little bit controversial because it's just after the whole Stratos lawsuit, which I talked about in the other video. Now, Specialized Future Shock Enduro E150 was a triple clamp fork with 150mm of travel, which seemed a bit strange when forks like the Mazzocchi 66 had up to 180mm of travel on single crowns without the hassle of the triple clamp system, because of course a triple clamp can restrict your steering, you can't do bar spins, you can't do certain tricks, and that was the way the world of mountain biking was going with these crazy tricks. And the E150 was not a downhill fork, but at the same time not a free ride fork. It was just an enduro fork, but a lot of people like to mix things up a little bit, so it didn't really have the downhill capability and it didn't have the free ride capability either. And on top of that, there was a lot of production problems with this fork. It didn't exist for that long. I believe it was only made for about 3 years. Some people say it was fantastic, and some people say it was simply the worst thing in the entire world. The fork also used a 25mm axle, which is obviously proprietary. You need the old Specialized hub. Without that, you're pretty much screwed. Although Industry 9 apparently did do an aftermarket hub for this fork. But yeah, all a bit crazy really. You need the Specialized or 25mm hub wheel in order for this thing to actually work. And compared to something like a RockShox Boxer or Mazzocchi 888 or Mazzocchi 66 if you want enduro/free ride, this thing was, well, a bit of an odd one really. Yes, Mazzocchi did have a few problems back then with the damping. but this thing apparently had far more, so you know, that's just the way it is. RockShox already had the domains and, you know, lyrics and totems and stuff like that, so this thing was a bit of an oddball. That's why it's in this video. I don't think it's particularly rare. Specialized, obviously, you know, sold those things en masse. But yeah, it's obviously an interesting one. If anyone has any experience of it, then let me know. I never actually played around one of those. I nearly got one last year, but the bike sold at the last minute. It would have been cool just to have a look. Yeah, I'm open-minded about these things, and you know, we'll take it apart, see how it works, see if it can be improved. There was a lot of people on that side of things doing mods to them, though. I believe they were dropping Fox cartridges into them and stuff like that, so that sounds pretty interesting. I'm sure some people in the comments will say, you know, I've had one of these, I modified it and done such and such. It just seems like a modifier's kind of fork. The stock form, yeah, maybe it wasn't great, but to modify, I'm sure it would have been pretty stiff, being only 150mm of travel, and yeah, so let me know. That's the end of this video, folks. Hope you liked it. If you didn't, go watch something else. And yeah, like and subscribe for more videos, including various things in the summer. We've got bike rebuilds that need doing, so I'll be filming all of that. Been a bit busy with work at the minute, so I don't really get home in daylight, which is a bit annoying. But yeah, that concludes this video, folks. Like and subscribe.